Prince Louis has long been regarded as one of the most captivating figures in the British royal family, bursting with energy, naturally bright, and always managing to steal the spotlight whenever cameras are near. But behind his cheerful grin and familiar public moments, few could have imagined that an unexpected statement from Buckingham Palace would send such powerful shockwaves across the nation. This shocking update instantly shifted all eyes to Prince Louis and Prince George, stirring widespread concern about what might truly be unfolding behind the palace walls. So what could have compelled the royals to break their long-held silence with such urgency? Drop a 1 in the comments if today's story resonates with you, or a 0 if you see it differently. And be sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next, as we uncover every hidden detail starting right now.
Names written in fire.
A royal announcement unlike anything seen before. The message from Buckingham Palace flashed across screens nationwide, each word carrying a gravity rarely present in royal statements. This time, it wasn't about schedules, ceremonies, or official duties. It centered on Prince George and Prince Louis, the young princes whose smiles once brought warmth to millions. Now, the palace has acknowledged something deeply personal, quietly serious, and painfully real. Even senior aides were caught off guard. There were no rumors, no advance notice.
A kingdom holds its breath, balancing.
The official announcement came without warning. The family thanked the public for their compassion as they dealt with a private situation involving Prince George and Prince Louis. For seasoned royal correspondents, the tone was startling. It carried a level of emotion, gravity, and sincere concern that Buckingham Palace rarely allows to surface. The carefully chosen words suggested challenges far beyond ordinary childhood difficulties, leading many to wonder what had prompted such an unusually open message. Speculation spread almost immediately. Some insiders hinted that it stemmed from the turbulence of the past year. Concerns surrounding the king's health, Princess Catherine's extended recovery, and relentless media scrutiny have created quiet pressures that even the youngest members of the royal family cannot escape. Discreet calls were made to teachers at Lambrook School. Scheduled family gatherings were postponed, and staff were instructed to operate with heightened caution, knowing that even the smallest misstep could invite unwanted attention. This announcement reflected a rare willingness by the monarchy to acknowledge vulnerability, offering a more human portrait of a family usually seen only through the lens of grand tradition. At the same time, it underscored the careful thought behind every royal decision. The palace's cautiously crafted statement was both protective and restrained, making it clear this was a private matter rather than a scandal. Observers pointed out the contrast with the royal family's usual public image. Prince William, appearing increasingly composed and dignified in his role as heir, remained visibly steady, reinforcing the monarchy's emphasis on continuity and calm authority. Meanwhile, whispers suggested that Prince Harry's recent travels and activities were once again drawing attention, though no official link had been confirmed. The palace offered no specific details, letting the significance of the message speak on its own. Across Britain, families paused to take in the news, phones filled with anxious messages. Television broadcasts intensified, and social media erupted with theories. For a brief moment, the nation saw a royal family that looked just like any other, facing private struggles in a very public world. Prince George and Prince Louis, long viewed as symbols of innocence and happiness, became a quiet reminder. Even behind the golden gates of Buckingham Palace, life remains fragile, and every heartbeat truly matters. In acknowledging this, the monarchy carefully balanced duty with compassion, delivering a message that was both understated and deeply meaningful. The palace reminded the world that beyond titles, crowns, and ceremony, a family is still a family, and even princes can be vulnerable. Yet as the palace placed family above rank, one lingering question remained. What would Prince William's next step be within the unusually quiet grounds of Kensington Palace? In that moment, the entire palace seemed to fall into silence. Few could have imagined the courtyard of Kensington Palace becoming so still. But that silence felt almost intentional, as if even the air itself had paused to listen. Prince William stepped forward slowly, not as a future king, not as a polished royal figure. The public, so privileged to ceremony, instead saw a father carrying a burden he could no longer conceal. The cameras trained on him seemed to fade into the background. What truly mattered in that moment was the story he was finally ready to tell. He did not begin with formal introductions or royal protocol. Instead, William took a slow, steady breath, as if carrying the weight of months of restless nights. Then, in a quiet voice that sharply contrasted with his usual composed manner, he addressed the rumors that had circulated through the press since early 2024. This time it was not about duty. It was not about protocol. It was about his children, Prince George and Prince Louis, and the private storm the family had been trying to manage behind closed doors. What William shared next was enough to make even seasoned reporters lower their pens. He spoke of the emotional strain Catherine's long recovery had placed on their family. The palace had confirmed her condition earlier that year, but no headline had prepared the world for what her absence truly meant for their sons. According to William, Louis was the first to show signs of struggle. Before long, George began carrying worries far beyond his young years. The two boys, usually inseparable, responded in different ways, one with confusion, the other with quiet fear. He remembered the nights when Louis softly crept into his room, eyes glistening with questions he didn't yet have the words to ask. And there were the days when George, usually calm and protective of his younger brother, began to pull inward, trying to seem strong while quietly wondering why everything suddenly felt so wrong. William admitted he hadn't recognized the early warning signs. Royal responsibilities, medical updates, and the pressure of preparing for a new chapter under King Charles had blurred together until he felt he was moving on instinct rather than clear judgment. He said it was one late moment that changed everything. Louis had whispered a question in the middle of the night, a question that broke straight through William's emotional guard. Is Mum going to leave us like Granddad? Mentioning King Charles's diagnosis may have sounded innocent, but it completely stunned William. In that moment, he realized both boys were carrying fears far heavier than their young ages should ever bear. And George, having overheard the question, quietly slipped from the room to comfort his younger brother in the hallway. It was a scene William said he would never forget. He also spoke about Princess Charlotte's quiet efforts to protect her brothers. The usually composed young princess had been overheard softly crying to her nanny, overwhelmed by the role she was trying to shoulder. A sister, a helper, a tiny protector. It was never her burden to carry, yet she felt it deeply. William's words were not scripted. They were not refined. They were unmistakably human. He asked the media for compassion, not as a royal issuing a command, but as a father trying to protect his children from unrelenting public attention. "They're just children," he said quietly. "Please give them the time and space to heal." For a brief moment, even the camera lenses seemed to pause. The press later dissected his statement, examining its deeper meaning and questioning whether this rare emotional openness pointed to broader tensions within the royal family. But in that fleeting, unforgettable moment, the only story that truly mattered was the raw vulnerability of a father standing between the world and his children. And somewhere within the palace walls, the echo of his confession was felt by every member of the family, especially the young princes whose lives were forever changed by the silence William chose to break. Did the silence he finally shattered conceal more than just private family pain? What was truly unfolding inside Adelaide Cottage that left Prince Louis and Prince George caught in an invisible storm? The quiet struggles of Prince Louis and Prince George. The hushed halls of Adelaide Cottage carried a heaviness that no royal smile could disguise. Inside, Prince Louis and Prince George were being drawn into an unseen storm, a world of silent fear and confusion felt only by those closest to them. Charlotte, the fiercely protective sister, did everything she could to shield her youngest brother. Wise beyond her years, she listened to whispered concerns and worried glances, holding together a delicate balance that even many adults would find difficult to sustain. But even her strength had its limits, and the truth revealed itself long before it could be hidden. Catherine, still struggling to steady herself, completely broke down when she learned what had been happening. Louis, once a bundle of laughter and endless curiosity, had begun to withdraw. Breakfast plates went untouched, garden games were abandoned, toys left where no one returned to them. George, usually outspoken and confident, watched his brother's liveliness slowly fade and felt the weight settle quietly on his own shoulders. The children's natural joy was replaced by a heavy, unsettling silence. The breaking point came during a classroom activity, a question that seemed harmless at first. "Is your mom still sick?" Them pierced through Louis's fragile defenses and everything fell apart. He fell completely silent, his eyes filled with confusion and fear. That night, he refused to eat, refused to smile, and by the next morning, he refused to return to school. It became a quiet yet urgent wake-up call for William and Catherine, who came to realize that simply shielding their children from the outside world was no longer enough. Behind closed doors, aides and child specialists were quietly brought in. A decision was made to temporarily pull Louis and George from Lambrook. It was an unconventional move within royal circles, carried out with no public display and no media attention. The world, still expecting bright smiles and carefully staged appearances, remained completely unaware. Behind the palace walls, a different reality quietly unfolded. A fragile one, where two young princes were finally allowed to exist without pressure or expectation. Adelaide Cottage became a sanctuary, a place where they could heal beyond the public eye. Catherine, despite her own struggles, spent hours reading to them, listening, and simply being there. Her presence became a lifeline for Louis, a steady anchor of comfort and security amid uncertainty. And then, an unexpected presence stepped forward. Princess Anne, known for her strength and steady resolve, quietly pledged her support to her nephews. Her calm authority brought a sense of stability to the family and became a powerful example of resilience for both Louis and George. Under Anne's guidance, the boys slowly began learning how to understand and manage their emotions, discovering that even royal children can face vulnerability and still grow stronger. Within those private rooms, the monarchy revealed a side of itself that the public rarely gets to see. care untouched by ceremony, protection that demands real courage, and the quiet realization that even princes are not spared from life's silent struggles. For Louis and George, the journey toward healing had begun, slowly, carefully, but with genuine intention. It served as a reminder that even in a world shaped by titles and tradition, the heart must always come first. What happened when watchers began to look more closely at Adelaide Cottage? And what unexpected truths did they uncover about the hidden battles of Prince Louis and Prince George? How did Prince Louis and Prince George ultimately find their way back? Tension inside Adelaide Cottage had reached an emotional tipping point. Prince Louis and Prince George, once inseparable and full of mischief, were retreating into silence, their laughter giving way to quiet corners and unanswered worries. Charlotte did everything she could, standing as a steady support for her younger brother, protecting him from hushed conversations and the anxious looks of adults who believed the children weren't listening. But even her determination began to falter, and the depth of Louis's distress surfaced before anyone was truly ready to face it. Catherine, already emotionally fragile after recent trials, was heartbroken when she found Louis curled up by himself, refusing breakfast and turning away from the garden games he once loved. George, sensing the tension and the widening distance between them, grew quietly protective. But even his youthful spirit could not fill the spaces left by the unseen storm. The breaking point came on what seemed like an ordinary school morning when a casual question, "Is your mum still sick?" caused Louis to shut down completely. If you believe the hidden struggle between Prince Louis and Prince George still conceals untold truths, leave a 1 in the comments. If you think the situation is more complex than we realize, leave a 0. And don't forget to like and subscribe to catch the next revelations shaking Buckingham Palace to its core. Prince Louis has long been regarded as one of the most captivating figures in the British royal family. Bursting with energy, naturally bright, and always managing to steal the spotlight whenever cameras are near. But behind his cheerful grin and familiar public moments, few could have imagined that an unexpected statement from Buckingham Palace would send such powerful shockwaves across the nation. This shocking update instantly shifted all eyes to Prince Louis and Prince George, stirring widespread concern about what might truly be unfolding behind the palace walls. So what could have compelled the royals to break their long-held silence with such urgency? Drop a 1 in the comments if today's story resonates with you, or a 0 if you see it differently. And be sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next, as we uncover every hidden detail starting right now.
Names written in fire, whispers in the shadow.
That night, he refused to speak, refused to eat, and would not return to class. William, drained and overwhelmed, privately confided in Princess Anne. In the quiet of the corridor, far from the palace's watchful eyes, he admitted he no longer knew how to reach his son. Anne listened with calm focus and offered a suggestion that startled even him. "Send him to me," she said simply. "Let him work with his hands. Let him hear the birds, not the whispers." Just days later, Louis and George were quietly relocated to Anne's countryside estate.
Names written in fire, a kingdom holds its breath.
Far from cameras, reporters, and the weight of public life, their mornings were no longer shaped by royal duties, formal lessons, or carefully staged moments. Instead, they began with simple, grounding routines: watering plants, clearing fallen leaves, tending the garden. Anne worked beside them, sharing stories not of crowns or controversy, but of horses, childhood pranks, and quiet lessons in patience and trust. Slowly, the boys began to open up. Louis, once withdrawn and timid, started to smile again, then to laugh. George, watching his brother's transformation, felt his own energy return. Horseback riding became a true turning point. Anne taught Louis and George that riding was not about display, but about trust, control, and inner confidence. Louis, hesitant at first, discovered strength with every steady step. The wind seemed to carry away the fear that had once clung to him. Anne's steady presence became a lifeline, not through formal therapy or palace rules, but through connection, responsibility, and a return to simple living. Behind the scenes, Anne also became a quiet confidant to William and Catherine. "He has Diana's fire," she told Catherine one afternoon. "He simply needs guidance." Those words stayed with William deeply. Diana, too, was once misunderstood, and now her grandson was reclaiming his light under the care of someone who understood the weight of royal silence. As Louis and George's world slowly began to steady, the palace beyond continued its quiet, carefully measured rhythm. Royal life moved on, uncertain, yet enduring. But for the first time in months, the youngest heirs had found peace. Not through titles or public image, but through patience, love, and the steady guidance of the Princess Royal. Yet when palace insiders began to examine her influence more closely, it sparked an unexpected ripple through the tensions surrounding Prince Louis's carefully guarded public appearances. The hidden struggle between Prince Louis and Prince George continued to linger. Tension settled over the palace like a heavy fog. Whispers turned into urgent murmurs as staff moved swiftly through the corridors carrying news that could no longer be contained. Somewhere within Buckingham Palace, a confidential memo had reportedly surfaced, hinting at a plan to keep Prince Louis out of the public eye, a strategy said to be for his protection, yet worded in a way that unsettled even the most experienced staff members. If you believe the secret struggle between Prince Louis and Prince George still conceals untold truths, leave a 1 in the comments. If you think the situation is more complex than we realize, leave a 0. And don't forget to like and subscribe to catch the next revelations shaking Buckingham Palace to its core. Phrases like discreet handling and unexpected appearances painted a picture of control rather than care. The memo implied that the young prince's public presence should be restricted, almost as if his very existence posed a risk to the carefully managed royal image. Prince George felt the impact as well. His brother's growing silence troubled him, and the lively spark that usually defined George began to dim under the weight of quiet worry. Together, the two boys became a reflection of a family struggling to balance privacy with public duty. Charlotte, ever the steady protector, shielded Louis from the whispers and the tense glances adults exchanged when they believed no child was listening. She stood with a strength far beyond her years, trying to shield her younger brother from the heavy, unspoken pressures inside the palace. But even her resolve began to falter as the weight of fear grew too heavy to bear. William was furious. Sources said he confronted senior royal advisors behind closed doors, demanding to know who had authorized such a cold directive without consulting him or Catherine. Seeing his son treated as a liability was simply unacceptable. Catherine's response, however, was even more severe. She reportedly called the memo inhumane, accusing senior staff of hiding behind their titles to avoid accountability, stunning words from a woman known for her steady composure. Her anger sent shockwaves through the palace, echoing down corridors long governed by silence and careful restraint. Then Princess Anne stepped forward. Calm, decisive, and unwavering, she moved directly into the center of the turmoil. The Princess Royal, who had quietly helped Louis rediscover his joy and confidence, confronted those responsible for the memo head-on. "You do not confine children," she was said to have stated. "You protect them." Her firm, unwavering words brought the entire room to silence. For the first time in weeks, it felt as though the machinery of the monarchy had paused, allowing space for the emotional well-being of its children instead of rigid protocol. For Louis and George, it marked a true turning point. Beyond the palace gates, public curiosity began to build. Reporters noticed the boys' absence from family gatherings and official appearances. Hashtags soon began to trend. The questions lingered without clear answers, only intensifying public speculation. As the pressure continued to rise, the palace finally responded. A statement was issued, direct and unprecedented, confirming that both princes were receiving support for their emotional recovery under the care of professionals and their family. The phrase "emotional recovery" sent shockwaves across media platforms. It acknowledged what parents around the world already know. No title, palace, or privilege can protect a child from the quiet weight of emotional pain. Attached to the official statement was a handwritten note from Catherine, written with the careful, emotional strokes of a mother struggling to keep her family steady. In the letter, she wrote, "He is strong but still so young, and we are learning to walk through this together as a family." There was no ornamentation, no attempt to soften or excuse anything, only the quiet honesty of a mother who sees her child's pain for exactly what it is. Those simple words, modest in form, carried immense emotional weight, humanizing the struggle in a way few royal messages ever have. The pain was no longer something to hide, but something to acknowledge and face together. The moment the letter became public, social media exploded. Parents across the world began sharing their own experiences. The quiet battles their children faced with anxiety, school pressure, or emotional struggles they had once struggled to even name. Honest conversations began to grow, creating a powerful wave of support unlike anything seen before. Mental health organizations quickly praised the openness, calling it a rare and vital step toward breaking the stigma around emotional well-being, especially coming from a family long viewed as a symbol of strength and perfection. For the first time, the public was given a glimpse of the vulnerability beneath the royal family's polished exterior. Real people with real fears, real pauses, and tears that would never appear before the cameras. Behind the gilded palace walls, long seen as untouchable, aides quietly admitted that the truth, however painful, was far better than months of silence and performance. In that moment, a new door opened. The monarchy was no longer just a symbol of power and elegance, but also a family struggling like any other. And that recognition made them more relatable than ever before. Buckingham Palace showed the world not perfection, but humanity, and in doing so, reshaped how the monarchy safeguards and nurtures its youngest heirs. In this rare moment of transparency, Louis and George were no longer seen only as princes. First and foremost, they were children. And the palace finally acknowledged that some battles are not fought in public view, but in quiet corners beyond the cameras. And as silence once again settled over the palace, an unspoken understanding took shape about the hidden struggles of Prince Louis and Prince George. And what role would Charlotte play in keeping them grounded? The quiet struggle between Prince Louis and Prince George continued. Inside Adelaide Cottage, a heavy stillness settled over what was once a lively home. Prince Louis and Prince George, once inseparable in their games and laughter, were now drifting into silence, their energy replaced by long stretches of loneliness and quiet unease. Charlotte, stepping far beyond what her age would suggest, tried to become a steady support for Louis, shielding him from the tension she sensed among the adults. She whispered jokes, told him stories, and held his hand at bedtime. Prince Louis has long been regarded as one of the most captivating figures in the British royal family, bursting with energy, naturally bright, and always managing to steal the spotlight whenever cameras are near. But behind his cheerful grin and familiar public moments, few could have imagined that an unexpected statement from Buckingham Palace would send such powerful shockwaves across the nation.
Of the highest heights.
This shocking update instantly shifted all eyes to Prince Louis and Prince George, stirring widespread concern about what might truly be unfolding behind the palace walls. So what could have compelled the royals to break their long-held silence with such urgency? Drop a 1 in the comments if today's story resonates with you, or a 0 if you see it differently. And be sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next, as we uncover every hidden detail starting right now.
One table, names written in fire.
But even her protective efforts could not stop the fractures forming in her brother's spirit. Before long, the truth slipped past the carefully built barriers and reached Catherine in a moment of quiet alarm. Catherine's heart tightened at the realization. Louis, once so full of life, now sat through breakfast nearly silent, barely touching his food. George, always observant, sensed the growing distance as well. Feeling the unseen weight pressing on his younger brother, George began to struggle too. For William and Catherine, the truth was painfully clear. Their attempts to shield the children from public eyes, cameras, and the press were no longer enough. Hidden wounds were taking shape, quiet yet persistent, behind carefully maintained smiles and perfectly staged appearances. Even the simplest moments, once filled with breakfast laughter and playful stories on the stairs, were replaced by long silences and uneasy glances among adults afraid of being overheard. Then came the breaking point. An innocent question in class. "Is your mom still sick?" shattered Louis's fragile sense of calm. He withdrew completely, refusing to speak or eat, and William and Catherine made an immediate decision to remove him from Lambro. No public statement, no dramatic announcement, only swift, quiet action to protect their child. Homeschooling began under close, careful supervision, with the focus placed not on academic progress, but on emotional safety and healing. For the first time in modern royal history, a child was allowed the space to recover without expectations or ceremony. George also received focused support through structured play and one-on-one guidance, helping him work through his own fears while watching his brothers struggle. Afternoons were dedicated to art therapy, giving Louis a safe place to paint the storms and confusion he still could not put into words. Nature walks became a daily ritual, offering calm through birdsong and wildflowers instead of flashing cameras and tightly scheduled appearances. Slowly, their home transformed into a peaceful sanctuary of care. Public perception began to shift as many praised William and Catherine for their courage and openness, drawing comparisons to Princess Diana, who once broke royal silence to speak about her own struggles with mental health. This choice reshaped the meaning of the monarchy's true strength, not through rigid composure or flawless appearances, but through honesty, gentleness, and compassion. But the calm was short-lived. Across the Atlantic, Prince Harry broke his silence in a candid interview, warning about the dangers of suppressing royal pain. Meghan added, "Protecting children must always come before protecting the image of any institution." What had begun as a private act of care, meant to shield Louis and George, suddenly ignited a global debate. William, reportedly furious, was said to have exclaimed, "He's not here for this." Seeing the intrusion as a betrayal, Catherine turned her full attention to their sons, determined not to let outside turmoil disturb their fragile recovery. Inside the palace, opinions were sharply divided. Some felt Harry and Meghan had forced a long overdue reckoning with the emotional wounds royal life had buried for generations. For decades, psychological pain had been swept beneath gilded carpets and masked with strict discipline. But for Louis and George, the path was different. A story of healing, resilience, and a childhood finally released from the crushing weight of expectation. Even amid whispers and speculation, the Wales family quietly redefined how royal children are protected. Their mental well-being was placed above ceremonial duty and public image, setting a precedent few had ever anticipated. When obligation and public perception collided, what unexpected ripple did it send through Adelaide Cottage, quietly shaping the hidden world of Prince Louis and Prince George? A garden of quiet strength. The palace seemed still, yet beneath that stillness, tension pulsed louder than any headline. Inside Adelaide Cottage, the days were heavy with unspoken fears. Prince Louis and Prince George, once carefree partners in mischief, were now drifting into their own quiet worlds. The laughter that once filled the hallways faded like sunlight at dusk, leaving only soft echoes behind. They spent long hours together in their room, gazing out at the garden they no longer played in, tracing familiar paths with distant, unfocused eyes. Charlotte, ever the watchful and protective sister, tried to sense the silent worries weaving through the house. But even her determination had its limits, and soon the fractures within the family's private world became impossible to overlook. Catherine, still healing from recent trials, watched her children with rising concern. Breakfast remained untouched. Lunch went by unnoticed. Smiles became rare. Subtle signs of emotional strain, restless hands, quiet withdrawal, long stretches of silence could no longer be ignored. Sensing his brother's isolation, George began to retreat as well, creating a silent tension the adults could neither explain nor easily mend. The breaking point came during what should have been an ordinary school activity. A seemingly innocent question about their mother's health shattered Louis's fragile sense of calm. That night, he refused to speak, refused to eat, and firmly told his parents he would not return to school the following day. William and Catherine were suddenly faced with an impossible choice: preserve tradition and appearance or protect the vulnerable hearts of their children. After careful reflection, a quiet decision was made. Louis and George would step away from public school and continue their education with private tutors and specialists. Royal aides arranged the transition discreetly, placing emotional safety above every measure of protocol. This transition was highly unusual, almost unheard of in the modern monarchy. But for William and Catherine, there was no alternative. Their children's well-being had to come first. Every moment was carefully shaped: long walks through the palace gardens, quiet afternoons with books and storytelling, and simple time together that strengthened their bond far beyond any polished expectations. Then came the moment that captured the world's attention in a way no official statement ever could. A single photo, quietly shared by a close family friend, showed Louis and George kneeling beside their mother in the palace garden, planting flowers. No crowns, no ceremony, no formal gestures, only quiet sincerity and simple joy. Lewis's face, once shadowed by fear, now shone with curiosity and trust. George, too, looked lighter as he worked alongside his mother and brother. In that peaceful moment, something profound revealed itself: resilience. The image spread almost instantly, not as a spectacle, but as a symbol of healing and hope. Public reaction shifted overnight. An outpouring of support followed, not only for the young princes, but for William and Catherine's choice to place love above headlines. Mental health organizations reported a surge of engagement unlike anything they had seen before. Parents began sharing their own stories, and new campaigns emerged calling for greater awareness of children's emotional well-being. Behind palace walls, conversations quietly turned toward the future. Could Louis and George one day support mental health efforts not out of obligation but from personal experience? Could their journey reshape how royal childhoods are protected and nurtured? In a monarchy often viewed as rigid, the Wales family quietly yet courageously took a realistic step forward. In a sunlit garden under the soft glow of morning light, the two boys found their laughter again, offering the world a quiet lesson. Even behind gilded walls, healing can take root, and courage can grow from the smallest acts. That photo became more than just an image. It became a promise that resilience, care, and love can reshape a legacy, one shared moment at a time. And now, the final question for you. What do you think truly compelled Buckingham Palace to break tradition and share this startling information about Prince Louis and Prince George? Leave a 1 if you believe this level of transparency was necessary, or a 0 if you think there are still hidden truths yet to come. And if today's story touched you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share so more people can better understand what truly unfolds behind the palace walls. Millions of fans around the world were moved when news broke that rock legend Ozzy Osbourne was entering one of the most difficult chapters of his life. Yet it was his final words, especially the deeply emotional moments shared with his wife, Sharon, that touched hearts the most, revealing a side of Ozzy few had ever seen. After more than 5 decades together, Sharon has now opened up about what he said during those intimate conversations. Were his words simply an expression of love or something far deeper, a message meant only for her? Stay with us as we uncover the story behind those unforgettable moments. Before we begin, have you ever heard the story behind Ozzy Osbourne's final words? If you believe family love is what truly matters most, leave a 1 in the comments or tap 0 if you see it differently. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the video, and don't forget to subscribe so you never miss more touching and unforgettable stories like this one. In a deeply emotional and personal interview, Sharon Osbourne shared the powerful final words her husband, Ozzy Osbourne, once spoke to her, speaking from their home in Buckinghamshire. Her reflections moved millions of fans around the world. Sharon revisited those private moments, words that revealed a side of Ozzy rarely seen by the public, and that left a lasting impression on everyone who has followed and admired his legendary career. With a mix of sorrow and calm in her heart, Sharon reflected on the final conversation she shared with Ozzy. "People have asked me countless times about Ozzy's last words," she said, "but for a long time, I couldn't bring myself to share them. They felt too personal, too sacred. With time, though, I came to realize they weren't meant only for me, they were meant for everyone who ever loved him." Her words were deeply raw and moving, allowing listeners to feel the full weight of that moment, not just for Sharon, but for every fan who has followed Ozzy's remarkable life and legacy. On the 22nd of July 2025, it was just Sharon and Ozzy alone in the room they had shared for so many years. That morning, as gentle sunlight filtered through the window, Ozzy, who had been unresponsive for nearly 24 hours, suddenly opened his eyes. His sharp, focused stare caught Sharon completely off guard. He opened his eyes and looked directly at me. It truly startled me, Sharon recalled. For so long, Parkinson's had made it difficult for him to speak or remain fully alert, but in that brief instant, he seemed completely present, and there was one final message he needed to share. For the next 20 minutes, Sharon and Ozzy shared a moment filled with profound emotion and quiet tenderness. He took my hand and said, "Sharon, come closer. I need to tell you something important," she recalled. To Sharon, it became the most beautiful expression of love she had ever known. The room seemed to awaken with memories, wedding photographs, family portraits, and countless scenes from a lifetime together, forming the perfect backdrop for a final conversation overflowing with meaning and love. Ozzy's final words were more than just a goodbye. They became a powerful testament to the unbreakable love he shared with Sharon. In that moment, she felt the full strength of the bond that had carried them through decades of both struggle and joy. What he said went far beyond parting words. It became a timeless symbol of their enduring love, a love untouched by time and unwavering in the face of life's greatest challenges. The soft morning light drifted across the family photographs, illuminating faces that had weathered the passing years. Sharon and Ozzy, once young, fearless, and deeply in love, had built a life rich with memories and quiet, tender moments. Those memories were forever woven into the remarkable journey they shared. As Sharon reflected, it felt as though their entire life together was surrounding them, watching over that final moment. And in Ozzy's last moments, he seemed to draw his strength from those timeless memories of love. That morning, when Ozzy opened his eyes, the first words he spoke were nothing like what Sharon had expected. Instead of fear or sorrow about the end, his voice was filled with gratitude and quiet wonder for the life they had built together. "Sharon," he said, "do you realize what we've done? Do you see the miracle we've created together?" Sharon's voice shook with emotion as she later recalled that powerful moment, one that captured the depth of their love and the beauty of a lifetime shared. Ozzy didn't speak about his career or the fame that had followed him for so many years. Instead, his words focused entirely on family, love, and the beautiful life they had built together through every season of chaos and challenge. For Sharon, it became crystal clear that life's greatest treasures are not measured in money or fame, but in love and in the people who stand beside you. Deeply moved by his words, Sharon encouraged everyone watching to hit the like button, if they too could feel the sincerity and profound love woven through every part of this story. Then Ozzy grew quiet, reflecting on the very beginning of their love story, marveling at how their bond had not only survived, but grown stronger through more than 4 decades together. "When I first met you, I was a broken man, only pretending to understand what it meant to be one," Ozzy admitted softly. He confessed that in those early years, he didn't truly know how to love someone or how to build a life with another person. Yet even then, he saw something in Sharon, something she herself had not yet realized. "And I loved you so deeply that you helped me become the man I always dreamed of being," Ozzy continued, his voice growing faint yet still steady with quiet strength. Sharon was shaken by the certainty in his words. Though illness had worn him down, every sentence felt deliberate thoughts he had been carrying through those final weeks. "He remembered exactly what I was wearing the first day we met," Sharon recalled softly. "He remembered the song playing in the background, and the exact moment he realized his life would never be the same." Her voice quivered as she relived that unforgettable memory. "At last," Ozzy said, "Sharon, the moment you stepped into my world, everything became possible. Before I met you, I only knew how to survive. After you came into my life, I finally learned how to live." His words carried not only a deep, timeless love, but also a powerful sense of gratitude for the life they had built together, a life defined not by fame, but by the simple, extraordinary force of love. The conversation grew even more intense as Ozzy reflected on the many layers of their life together. He spoke openly about the darker chapters of their past, including his struggles with addiction that had once nearly torn them apart, while also honoring the victories they had fought through side by side. "I was so lost in my own pain that I couldn't see how deeply I had hurt you," Ozzy admitted. His words carried the full weight of an apology, but they also stood as a powerful recognition of Sharon's unwavering love, her strength, and her devotion through every storm they had endured together. Sharon shared that in the closing moments of their conversation, Ozzy reflected on the most difficult chapters of his life. "Sharon," he said softly, "I know there were times when you should have walked away, times when anyone else would have left, but you stayed. You fought for us, and you believed in our love even when I couldn't believe in myself." Those words nearly brought Sharon to tears, a powerful reminder of the resilience, loyalty, and unwavering strength of the love she carried for Ozzy through every trial they had faced together. Ozzy then spoke of the darkest periods of his life, the years when addiction nearly shattered everything he held dear. "For so long, I believed I didn't deserve to be loved," he admitted. "My childhood made me feel unworthy of happiness." Sharon said those painful years had carved deep wounds in his heart. Yet by finally speaking those truths, Ozzy also came to recognize something powerful, that real love has the strength to heal, and that it can survive even the fiercest storms. What moved Sharon the most was when Ozzy spoke about their relationship and the powerful role she had played in shaping his life. "He told me that every good thing that happened after we met was something we achieved together, not something he did alone," Sharon recalled. Ozzy explained that from the moment they came together in 1979, every success, both in his career and in his personal life, was built on her unwavering support. "People see me as a solo artist," he told her, "but the truth is, everything I've accomplished came from our partnership." His words became a lasting reminder of how deeply Sharon's presence had shaped not only his music, but the very foundation of his life. Ozzy continued by reflecting on Sharon's influence throughout his music career, sharing that every album he created after they came together was made stronger through her guidance and belief in him. Songs like "Mama, I'm Coming Home" and "Close My Eyes Forever" would never have existed without your influence, Ozzy admitted. He explained that it was Sharon who helped him open his heart, who taught him to embrace authenticity and allow vulnerability to become the true soul of his music. The conversation slowly shifted into a more reflective, philosophical space as Ozzy opened up about love and mortality. "Sharon," he said softly, "you chose to love me every single day for 43 years? Even when I wasn't easy to love, even when I made life difficult, even when walking away would have been the easier choice." His words were filled with deep gratitude for the woman who had stood beside him through every storm, choosing him again and again, no matter what life placed in their path. In the end, Ozzy shared a powerful truth he had come to understand in his final months. Love isn't just a feeling, it's a choice you make every single day. His words reflected a deep realization that love is more than emotion. It is commitment, a conscious decision renewed again and again. Sharon listened with tears in her eyes, knowing that despite every obstacle they had faced, it was that daily choice to love one another that carried them through and ultimately helped them rise above everything life had placed in their way. Sharon recalled the moment Ozzy told her, "Meeting you was the moment my life truly began." Those words touched her deeply, making her realize that Ozzy's world, with all its fame and success, had not truly begun until she became part of it. "Before I met you, everything felt like a performance, like I was only playing a role," Sharon reflected. For Ozzy, loving Sharon and building a family with her was the first time he had ever truly lived as his real self, a realization that transformed their relationship in ways Sharon had never imagined. Ozzy helped Sharon realize that she was far more than just his wife or his manager. She was the person who helped him discover his truest self beneath all the fame and public personas. He told me that the Ozzy Osbourne the world saw was never truly the Prince of Darkness or the wild rock and roll icon, Sharon recalled. The real man was the one who loved me, the husband and father who found his greatest happiness in the simple, quiet moments with the people he loved most. One of the most powerful moments of their conversation came when Ozzy expressed his deepest gratitude for the way Sharon had protected both him and their family over the years, often at great personal sacrifice. "Sharon, you've been my shield and my sword for decades," he said, his voice trembling. "You protected me from the darkest parts of myself. You fought battles I never even knew were being fought, and you gave up pieces of your own life just to keep our family together." His eyes filled with tears as he finally found the words to honor the countless ways Sharon had stood by him through everything. Sharon recalled how Ozzy spoke about the countless times she had placed his needs and their families above her own. "He talked about the moments when I set aside chances to grow my own career just to protect our family, and the times I absorbed criticism that was truly meant for him," Sharon shared. Then Ozzy looked at her and said, "Now I finally understand it all, Sharon. I see everything you sacrificed for us, and I want you to know that none of it was ever in vain or unseen." In that moment, Sharon realized that Ozzy had reached a deeper understanding of her love and sacrifices, something she had never fully believed he would one day see. The most heartbreaking moment of their conversation came when Ozzy began to speak about his regrets. "I wish I had been more present during the beautiful moments we shared. I wish I had been the husband you deserved every single day, not only on the days when I felt at my best," Ozzy admitted softly. Sharon felt her heart tighten as she listened, realizing these were not just words born of sadness, but a sincere expression of remorse for all the times he couldn't give his best during the hardest chapters of their life together. Though Ozzy carried regrets about not always being fully present during life's most meaningful moments, Sharon knew that their love through every hardship and heartbreak had remained powerful and unbreakable. His final words were not simply a goodbye, but a deeply emotional tribute to the woman who had stood by him through everything, the partner who had given him strength, faith, and enduring love in every chapter of their life together. Before we move forward, have you ever felt the true power of love during life's hardest moments? If you believe love can overcome any challenge, drop a 1 in the comments. If you see it differently, share a 0. Now, let's dive deeper into Ozzy's final words to Sharon, a love that remained unshaken through every trial and every storm. This isn't just another routine update from the palace. At exactly 4:47 p.m. GMT, something unusual happened. The royal social media accounts suddenly went silent. Not a single post or tiny update appeared. The abrupt quiet felt almost unsettling, making you wonder what was happening behind the scenes. There were no cheerful announcements, no polished photos, no subtle hints, just a complete stop. And if there's one thing we've learned, it's that silence from the royal family is never random. When everything goes quiet, it usually means something important is taking shape out of sight. And when Kensington Palace put out a 15-word notice at 5:02 p.m., it sent a wave of unease across the UK. It felt like something serious was about to unfold, and no one was prepared for it. So what exactly is happening behind the scenes? Make sure to drop a 1 in the comments if you feel moved by this story, or a 0 if you see it differently. Share your thoughts with us, and don't forget to like and subscribe so you won't miss what comes next, where we'll break down all the details behind this unfolding situation. Before we dig into what this really means for the royal family, Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any updates. The monarchy runs like a finely tuned machine, morning smiles from engagement photos, carefully timed afternoon posts from royal foundations, and the steady, predictable rhythm of an institution that has adapted to modern life over centuries, always organized, always meticulously planned. But this silence didn't follow the usual pattern. There were no glitches, no official delays, just a deliberate, unusual quiet that felt unusually intentional, impossible to overlook, and enough to make anyone notice that something out of the ordinary was happening behind the scenes. Veteran royal reporters, the ones who've spent decades covering the monarchy, started calling each other within minutes. They knew this wasn't normal protocol. They knew the palace never breaks its routine without a reason. And when even unofficial royal photographers began packing up early outside Clarence's house, it became clear that something had shifted. Then, at exactly 5:52 p.m., the palace broke its silence, not with answers, but with tension. The message was short and cryptic. Kensington Palace would release an important statement at 6 p.m. tonight. That was it. No names, no topics, just a countdown. The response was immediate and explosive. Newsrooms across London erupted. Phones rang non-stop, and social media exploded with speculation. Was it a death? Had the king stepped down? Was a major scandal brewing inside the palace? Major TV networks interrupted their regular programming. The BBC anchors switched to formal black attire, while Sky News presenters gripped their scripts with trembling hands. In a world where every move of the royal family is scrutinized, this level of coordinated silence sent a clear signal that something serious was happening. Some insiders whispered it involved the Princess of Wales, while others suggested it was a wider crisis, possibly affecting both the king and the heir. But no one knew for sure, and that uncertainty made it all the more terrifying. For the first time, the most tightly controlled institution in Britain seemed to have lost control of the story, even if only for an hour. Inside Kensington Palace, William and Catherine sat together in silence. No one else in the room, no aides, no distractions, just the two of them holding hands while the world outside swirled with speculation. Catherine's eyes were dry, too dry, as if she had already shed all her tears. William looked exhausted, as if he hadn't slept in days. Upstairs, their children were with their nanny, shielded from the storm that was about to hit, completely unaware that in less than an hour, the world would learn the truth their parents had been too fearful to speak. And as the clock struck 6 p.m., the world held its breath, only to be struck by the unimaginable. Catherine had once stood in Windsor Gardens, speaking about childhood development and hopes for the future. But this time, her voice trembled as she spoke a word no one expected: cancer, stage 3. With a calm yet fierce composure, concealing months of private pain, the Princess of Wales looked into the camera and forever changed the monarchy. The moment the video aired, time seemed to pause. Catherine, sitting in the same garden where she had once shared words of hope, now carried the invisible weight of something far darker. There was no media frenzy, no grand royal backdrop, just her voice, calm, careful, and unmistakably real. Her opening words were simple, almost clinical, but when Catherine revealed stage 3 ovarian cancer, the illusion of perfection shattered. For the first time, the world saw the Princess of Wales not as a flawless icon, but as a woman fighting for her life. The video, just 2 minutes and 47 seconds long, carried a power no royal address in decades could match. She wasn't broken. She wasn't asking for sympathy. She spoke calmly and openly, like a mother preparing her children for a heartbreaking truth. She discussed her treatment, stepping back from royal duties, and placing her trust in her medical team. Then she looked straight into the camera, not with fear, but with quiet determination. She would fight, no matter the odds. It was a powerful statement of inner strength and resilience, not just from a princess, but from any woman facing such a challenge. Within seconds, millions had tuned in, and by the end of the first hour, the video had already surpassed 100 million views. Global news channels immediately interrupted their regular programming. Front pages were redesigned in real time. Online, messages of support and tribute poured in like never before. Hashtags, such as Stand with Catherine and Royal Strength, quickly began trending across platforms. Cancer survivors shared their own stories. Mothers saw themselves in her. Fathers held their children a little tighter. And behind countless screens, tears fell for a woman most would never meet, yet somehow felt deeply connected to. The official statement released at the same time confirmed what the video had made clear. Catherine would be stepping back from public life indefinitely, with no royal engagements planned for the near future. The woman once seen as the steadfast face of the monarchy would no longer be in the spotlight. The responsibility for public appearances, ceremonies, and representation would now fall to William, who, according to the statement, would continue his royal duties while supporting his wife and their children through this difficult time. But the full weight of what had just happened didn't sink in until the messages began pouring in. King Charles, who had recently been dealing with a private health issue, released a personal statement, calling Catherine the strength of the next generation. Camilla followed with words of unity and motherly support. Then came a message that left many stunned from Prince Harry and Meghan. Short, restrained, yet undeniably sincere, they wrote, "We are thinking of Catherine and the family, sending love and strength to them." It was a rare and poignant moment for a family long marked by distance and hardship. It was a moment that reminded the world that behind the palace walls and royal ceremonies, they were still human, vulnerable, hurting, and struggling to support one another. Yet beneath the condolences and polished statements, the royal family was quietly bearing the weight of private pain. January 23rd would haunt Prince William forever. In a quiet clinic room, with the royal family's lead cancer specialist, Dr. Marsden, wearing a solemn expression, one word changed everything: cancer. In that instant, William's world shattered. For the first time since his mother's funeral, the future King of England broke down, sobbing uncontrollably, feeling utterly helpless. The symptoms had been building for months, but nothing prepared him for this moment. At first, Catherine had simply felt more tired than usual, attributing it to the stress of long trips and raising 3 growing children. She assumed her recent weight loss was from stress, the persistent cough from a lingering flu, and the night sweats from hormonal changes. But the reality was far different. Even as her energy plummeted to the point where maintaining her usual royal composure became a struggle, she kept going. She showed up, smiled, and performed because it was expected, because the royal family never stops. But then came the moment that could no longer be ignored. A quiet family dinner at Anmer Hall became the turning point, the instant when everything changed forever. Laughter filled the room, candlelight flickered, and the children eagerly awaited a new bedtime story. Then, suddenly, Catherine collapsed. Her face went pale, her eyes glazed over. She didn't fully faint, but her exhaustion was enough to send William into a panic. The children screamed, and William immediately called for an ambulance. Within the hour, Catherine was examined by the royal physicians and placed under strict confidentiality. Tension gripped the household as worry mounted. Initial blood tests suggested severe anemia, but there was no clear diagnosis. Determined to understand what was happening, William requested further tests and information. It wasn't just exhaustion, something was wrong, and William knew it. Experts from the Royal Marsden Hospital were quietly brought in. More tests followed. CT scans, imaging, biopsies. The waiting was unbearable, every minute stretching into what felt like an eternity. Then, in a sterile clinic room on January 23rd, the diagnosis changed everything. Stage 3 ovarian cancer, malignant, with signs of metastasis. William held his breath, his heart racing just as it had when he was 15, walking behind his mother in the funeral procession, consumed by fear and loss. But this time, there was no crowd, no media, just silence. And in that silence, he broke down. Decades of royal composure crumbled under the weight of unimaginable fear, yet Catherine, the family's pillar of strength, remained steadfast. Her first question wasn't about survival odds or treatment options, it was quieter, more personal. Can I have more children? The doctors exchanged tense glances. The answer was likely no. Her second question was even harder. How do we tell the children? There was no easy answer. Plans were immediately set in motion. Surgery was scheduled with the nation's leading cancer surgeon, with the goal of removing the primary tumor, assessing the extent of the spread, and beginning treatment without delay. But hope felt fragile, and every moment was critical. Any delay could be costly. William left the hospital a changed man. He held Catherine's hand in the car but couldn't bring himself to meet her eyes, afraid of what he might see. In that moment, he wasn't the Prince of Wales, nor the future king. He was simply a husband broken by fear and uncertainty. And yet, this was only the beginning. The decision to go public with the truth carried a price too heavy to measure, leading to days of tense arguments behind the palace walls. William pleaded for more time, but Catherine insisted on honesty. The longer they hid the truth, the more rumors distorted it. So the family chose not only to disclose the illness, but also to take control of the narrative. William wasn't ready. His instincts, shaped by decades of royal upbringing, told him to protect, to wait, to shield the woman he loved from the public scrutiny. He thought they could keep it under wraps a little longer, perhaps until the first round of treatment was complete, or until she looked healthier, more like herself. But Catherine knew better. She understood what was happening. Questions started to surface. Staff whispered quietly among themselves, security was increased, flights were suddenly canceled, and vague explanations followed. It was only a matter of time before someone spoke out, and when they did, it wouldn't be the full truth, only their version of it. The couple's disagreement wasn't dramatic, it was quiet, painful, and full of love. William feared exposure, while Catherine worried about the consequences of keeping the secret. She wasn't afraid of people knowing she was sick. She was afraid of losing control over her story. She feared that one day her children would read guesses and rumors from strangers instead of hearing the truth from her own voice. She wanted to control the story not out of pride, but to protect her family, especially George, Charlotte, and Louis. With a determination only Catherine could summon, the plan was set in motion. A film crew was brought into Windsor Gardens under strict confidentiality. The set was simple. No palace fanfare, no royal flags, just a mother sharing the hardest chapter of her life with the world. The filming itself was grueling. William stood just outside the camera's view, holding her hand tightly, offering silent support. Catherine's voice cracked only once, when she spoke about her children. That was the moment William almost stopped her, but she kept going, saying every word. Hours before the public release, the media had been alerted. Editors and directors received direct notifications and were instructed to clear airspace by 6 p.m. sharp. No explanations, no previews, no scripts, just be ready. The Palace Communications Office coordinated every detail: press releases, online platforms, and simultaneous uploads on royal channels. The operation ran like a well-oiled machine, yet it felt as if it were teetering on a cliff, with the truth slowly unfolding, though not everything had been revealed just yet. The public would learn that her cancer had reached a serious stage, that treatment had begun, and that Catherine would be stepping back from royal duties. But the deeper details, metastasis, the exact risks, the moments of collapse, remained behind palace walls. Meanwhile, William stood by the children's bedroom window as the video aired, watching the sun set behind the trees. Outside, the world reacted crying, speculating, mourning. Inside Anmer Hall, however, there was no time for sympathy. While the world grieved, the real battle had only just begun. Inside the private sanctuary of Wales, fairy tales gave way to hospital visits and quiet reassurances. Catherine plastered her daughter's crayon drawings on the walls, little shields against despair. George stopped crying in public. Charlotte started drawing happy endings, and little Louis just wanted his mother to read one more bedtime story. Anmer Hall, once a refuge from the royal spotlight, had become the epicenter of a family straining under pressure. Deciding how to tell the children was far from easy, even with the doctor's guidance. Psychologists offered guidance, but there was no royal handbook for explaining to young children that their mother might not survive. George, now old enough to grasp the seriousness, nodded solemnly, asking few questions and staying close. Charlotte held on to hope the only way she knew how, through drawings filled with sunshine, hearts, and smiling faces. Louis, the youngest, didn't fully understand the word cancer, but he sensed something was wrong. His questions were simple, yet profound. Will Mum still breastfeed me? Why is Mum so tired? There seemed to be no answer that could ever feel enough. The Middleton family moved in quietly, without any formal announcement. Carol became the anchor of the household, cooking, planning, comforting, and protecting. Michael handled invisible but vital tasks, from securing the house to coordinating schooling and logistics. The palace couldn't manage the public affairs alone. Their presence wasn't just helpful, it was essential. Without them, William and Catherine might have collapsed much sooner. Catherine's transformation was difficult, and the public only ever saw the carefully curated moments, if they saw anything at all. What do you think about the Middletons' role in all of this? Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to stay updated with more insider stories about the royal family. But behind those closed doors, the truth could no longer be hidden. Her hair began falling out in patches, her skin started to peel, and she often needed help just to climb the stairs. On her worst days, she couldn't lift her head. On brighter days, she read to her children, even if her voice was barely a whisper. The physical toll was brutal and relentless, yet she never let the children see her break. William struggled to divide himself, carrying the weight of it all while facing his own private pain. The whole world seemed to hold its breath as King Charles and Prince William, both visibly worn down by the pressures and expectations that come with the crown, finally stepped forward. But what followed wasn't the polished, carefully crafted royal statement people were accustomed to. Instead, it was a deeply emotional and vulnerable confession about Princess Catherine's troubling condition, a truth that palace advisors had worked tirelessly for months to keep out of the public spotlight. Their words left many wondering, what exactly had been happening behind the tightly guarded doors of Kensington Palace during all this time? And why had the situation reached a point where silence was no longer possible? Why did William appear to break royal protocol with what many saw as a bold, unprecedented move against his own father? Today, we pull back the curtain on a dramatic behind-the-scenes timeline often discussed by royal watchers, a story of Catherine's struggles, rising tension within the institution, and the sense of betrayal many believe unfolded behind palace walls. This is not just a story about health, it's a story of power, pressure, conflict, and how Catherine's quiet strength, as described by her supporters, may have influenced the monarchy in unexpected ways. Don't miss a moment, subscribe, hit like, and comment below as we dive into this extraordinary chapter of royal speculation and analysis. Just moments ago, Buckingham Palace broke its silence with an update that immediately shifted global attention toward London. The atmosphere at the press briefing seemed to grow heavier as King Charles and Prince William stepped forward composed, yet clearly affected by the weight of the moment. This wasn't a routine ceremonial appearance. It was a rare instance in which the royal family shared information they felt obligated to address, a sensitive development that many in the public had been anxious about for weeks. The palace stated that Catherine had undergone a planned procedure and was recovering, but observers quickly noticed a shift in Prince William's schedule, suggesting he was navigating an emotionally demanding period. Some of his engagements were postponed, others rearranged, and each time he appeared in public, the strain seemed apparent. Even as questions from the press continued to surface, the palace remained measured and guarded in its responses, fully in line with the royal family's long-standing approach to preserving personal privacy. King Charles spoke first, his tone subdued and emotional, yet warm, less like a monarch and more like a father expressing deep concern and genuine affection for his daughter-in-law. Prince William followed by sharing sincere appreciation for the public's support during what many observers described as an undeniably challenging period. He offered no overly bright assurances. Instead, he acknowledged the uncertainty surrounding the situation, emphasizing that the family remained hopeful while also preparing themselves for whatever the coming weeks might bring. What truly moved the public was not just the message itself, but the way the palace chose to present it: calm, sincere, and intentionally free of unnecessary alarm. Their approach conveyed genuine respect for Catherine's privacy and gently reminded everyone that regardless of status or title, every person faces moments of vulnerability and deserves compassion. In that moment, she wasn't seen merely as a royal figure, but as a powerful symbol of strength and resilience. In those early days, he continued to carry out his royal duties, offering the expected smiles, nodding through meetings, and delivering brief statements meant to reassure the public. Yet behind the closed doors of Adelaide Cottage, his private life was growing increasingly heavy. The partner who had always stood by his side throughout their royal journey was facing challenges, while the palace maintained its long-standing expectation that he remain silent and act as if everything were normal. Even so, many questions remain unanswered. The palace has shared few details about her situation, stressing instead that this is a time when the family needs privacy. To see the full picture, we need to look back to the early weeks when Princess Catherine first stepped back from public life. At the time, most assumed it was simply a routine period of rest and recovery, but as the weeks went by with no new photos, no official appearances, and no updated schedule, public concern began to grow. As the silence continued, speculation naturally began to emerge, yet reputable media outlets reminded the public to avoid spreading unverified information, stressing that when it comes to matters of health, compassion, understanding, and respect are essential. Amid all this, images of Prince William looking thoughtful and quietly strained highlighted the immense pressure he faced, balancing his duties as heir to the throne with his role as a husband deeply concerned for the well-being of the woman he loves. The atmosphere in the room was solemn, no pomp, no elaborate ceremony, just genuine sincerity and respect for those gathered to listen. The message they shared was brief, yet carried significant weight, leaving a lasting impression on everyone present. The palace confirmed that Princess Catherine's health had recently required special attention, signaling the seriousness of the situation. While no medical details were released, they acknowledged that the family was facing a particularly challenging period and appealed to the public to understand the importance of privacy, discretion, and compassion during this time. Even though he had been trained for his royal duties from a very young age, nothing could have fully prepared him for a moment like this. That image served as a reminder to the public that behind all the ceremonies, protocols, and titles, they are still a family in need of compassion, patience, and respect. For William, the role of a devoted husband has always carried more weight than the title of prince, and it was precisely that instinct that led him to make a choice that prompted the entire royal family to pause, reflect, and reconsider how they navigate both duty and personal life. His familiar public smile faded, replaced by eyes that looked weary, carrying the quiet anxiety of a husband trying to stay strong. As William's emotional burden grew heavier each day, Catherine became the focus of the nation's concern and empathy. She said little, yet her condition spoke volumes. Every subtle expression, every gentle tone in her voice, served as a powerful reminder of just how important it is to prioritize one's health, regardless of status, title, or position in society. The words, "We hope, but we must also prepare," captured the heavy responsibility of a husband striving to remain composed under immense pressure. Almost immediately, from Windsor to Kensington and beyond, people lit candles and sent prayers, wishing peace and comfort to the royal family. International media interrupted their regular programming to share the updates, while millions of messages of support poured into Buckingham Palace, reflecting the deep admiration and compassion the public continues to feel for a woman they have long respected. Isolation gradually began to affect William. Friends noticed he was attending fewer and fewer gatherings, while advisors grew worried as their calls went unanswered. He even distanced himself from his closest aides, choosing silence over the long, predictable conversations expected of him. And when he did speak, his words were direct, unfiltered, and increasingly resolute. Behind the palace walls, tension grew with each passing day. When he was instructed to continue following the royal image protection script, William made a decisive choice: he would no longer comply. Meanwhile, advisors suggested creating controlled images of Catherine to reassure the public, but William rejected the idea completely. He refused to allow his wife's struggles to be turned into a public relations tool. Instead of taking the safe, scripted route, William quietly reached out to a few trusted journalists, not to create scandal, but to help guide the story towards something honest and compassionate. As Catherine's condition worsened, William's worry and despair deepened. He could see the changes clearly, her voice growing softer, her eyes losing their sparkle, and her energy fading, as if weighed down by an invisible burden. Her story also became a powerful reminder of the importance of privacy and the need for peace in everyone's life. Amid all the mounting pressure, Charles was the last person anyone expected to take an unconventional step. A man known for his tradition and caution, he changed the moment he stood at Catherine's bedside. Witnessing her frailty, her quiet courage, and the vulnerability she carried shook him profoundly. From that point on, it became impossible for him to hide behind old protocols and familiar rituals any longer. His words immediately brought the debate to a standstill. It was one of the rare occasions in his reign when personal emotion took precedence over tradition. Advisors exchanged glances, realizing they were witnessing a turning point, something entirely different from the careful, composed king they had always known. This was not a calculated political move. It was an expression of genuine compassion, something no media strategy could ever fabricate or hide. In that very moment, a new dividing line began to emerge within the walls of the palace. He was no longer focused on protecting an institution, he was protecting his wife. A brief email to his father carried just 5 words in the subject line. "She deserves better than this." The message did more than make a request. It highlighted the urgent need for transparency and compassion. When the email leaked, public reaction was immediate and intense. Articles appeared rapidly, yet William remained steadfast. Rather than turning against him, the public began to question whether information had been overly controlled and whether the truth had been kept from them for far too long. Charles left the room wearing a deeply contemplative expression. His silence that evening spoke louder than any speech ever could, conveying the weight of the moment in a way words never could. At Clarence House, he called an extraordinary meeting not to plan ceremonies or upcoming engagements, but to confront the reality that people and truth are far more important than long-held traditions. In that rare and revealing moment, it became clear that no matter one's position or title, the most essential qualities are often compassion, empathy, and the willingness to truly listen to those around you. For the first time in many years, they were no longer just father and son, they were partners standing side by side. Together, they began drafting an important announcement, not as royal figures preparing a formal declaration, but as two men determined to protect someone they deeply cared for. The meetings, which had started off tense, gradually became more focused, with every sentence and every word carefully considered to ensure both clarity and accuracy. Camilla, long experienced in guiding strategy, tried to reason with him, reminding him of the need for caution and the pressure to uphold the royal family's image of stability. She spoke about public expectations and the demand for steadiness and responsibility during challenging times. But this time, Charles no longer wanted to play the role of a monarch who simply followed protocol. His voice was firm and resolute as he made it clear that silence was no longer acceptable, and that the most important priority now was to honor and respect the person who needed understanding the most. Some sided with Charles, believing that greater transparency would earn the public's respect. Others worried about the potential consequences of breaking long-standing tradition. But everyone sensed one undeniable truth: the atmosphere inside the palace had shifted. In the days that followed, something even more unexpected occurred. William, who had long held his share of disagreements with his father, began to see him in a different light. United by the same worry, the same sense of urgency, father and son found the distance between them slowly starting to close. They rehearsed the speech behind closed doors, not to achieve flawless perfection, but because they understood that every word carried weight and could influence how the public would react. The narrative surrounding Catherine was no longer being shaped with restraint, but with a sense of openness and genuine respect. However, this shift sent quiet tremors through the royal household. Advisors who had once held considerable influence began to feel uneasy, realizing that long-standing protocols were being challenged and that the balance of power was moving in directions they could no longer fully control. Routine checkups had suggested that something wasn't entirely right, yet those early signs were often overlooked in an environment where stability and composure were always the highest priorities. Catherine continued appearing in public with her familiar, reassuring smile. She attended events, met with communities, and carried herself with the same grace people admired. But after each engagement, the fatigue became a little more noticeable. At times, her diminishing energy forced her to pause just briefly to steady herself before moving forward again. The choices each person makes in this story don't just reflect their responsibilities, they also remind us that genuine sincerity and empathy can change everything. The meeting room was filled with senior aides, advisors, and even Camilla. What was normally a formal, orderly environment suddenly grew tense when Charles, a man known for his steady composure, brought his fist down on the table. The whole room fell silent, with firm, unshakable resolve. He said there was no reason to keep hiding the truth any longer, and that the public had the right to know about the quiet battle a member of their family had been fighting. They worried that changing their approach would create a new precedent, that sharing too much truth would make everything harder to manage. But their biggest fear was losing the carefully crafted image the monarchy had built over generations. Still, the truth could no longer stay hidden behind closed doors. The situation became even more complex when it was revealed that Catherine had been showing signs of exhaustion long before this moment. They were subtle but consistent signals, often overshadowed by her demanding schedule and the enormous responsibilities she carried. These moments unfolded quietly, kept out of the public eye out of respect for her privacy. On several occasions, She nearly collapsed during community events, but each incident was managed discreetly. Medical staff recommended further tests to better understand what was happening, and the more detailed results raised genuine concern. They urged immediate rest and early treatment. Yet within the royal household, caution about media reaction and fears of public criticism caused every decision to be postponed, pushing important choices further and further away, even as the situation became more serious. If you feel that her courage and honesty truly touch your heart, go ahead and drop a 1. If you're still on the fence or not completely convinced yet, leave a 0. Sit back and enjoy the full video, and while you're at it, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to support the channel. Your support helps us continue bringing you meaningful, emotional, and inspiring stories that stay with you long after the video ends. While advisors were still debating how to handle the situation, Catherine's condition began to change faster than anyone had anticipated. On the outside, she remained calm and composed, but inside, she was waging a quiet, relentless battle. William noticed it immediately and repeatedly urged the advisors to rethink their approach. But by that point, the delays had made everything far more complicated. Beautifully crafted images and carefully worded reassurances were prepared to keep the public calm, yet behind those polished messages, the reality could no longer be hidden. In those few fleeting seconds, she spoke honestly about what she was going through. The video appeared unexpectedly, not as part of any planned campaign, but as a personal, deeply courageous message. In that moment, the royal family felt more human and relatable than ever before. And it was precisely that moment that shifted how many people saw the importance of transparency, courage, and the profound value of speaking the truth. Her eyes, the pauses between her words, every measured breath carried a quiet, unwavering determination. She thanked everyone who had waited patiently and asked for more privacy as she continued her treatment. Yet beneath each word was a subtle sense of someone gently letting go of something familiar, soft, restrained, and deeply moving. There was no drama, no grandeur, only a stillness that gripped the hearts of everyone watching. It was as if she fully understood the weight of the truth, yet had no choice but to speak it in a quiet, deliberate whisper. But behind all of this were long, difficult conversations within the royal family about what the right decision truly was. One side believed the public deserved to know. The other worried that revealing the full truth could make everything spiral out of control. Even under immense pressure, it was Catherine herself who made the most unexpected move. She chose to speak out on her own terms, not through a palace briefing, not with a carefully crafted media strategy, but in a simple, heartfelt video recorded in the quiet of a garden where she could share her feelings honestly and directly with the world. The whole world seemed to hold its breath as King Charles and Prince William, both visibly worn down by the pressures and expectations that come with the crown, finally stepped forward. But what followed wasn't the polished, carefully crafted royal statement people were accustomed to. Instead, it was a deeply emotional and vulnerable confession about Princess Catherine's troubling condition, a truth that palace advisors had worked tirelessly for months to keep out of the public spotlight. Their words left many wondering, what exactly had been happening behind the tightly guarded doors of Kensington Palace during all this time? And why had the situation reached a point where silence was no longer possible? Why did William appear to break royal protocol with what many saw as a bold, unprecedented move against his own father? Today, we pull back the curtain on a dramatic behind-the-scenes timeline often discussed by royal watchers, a story of Catherine's struggles, rising tension within the institution, and the sense of betrayal many believe unfolded behind palace walls. This is not just a story about health, it's a story of power, pressure, conflict, and how Catherine's quiet strength, as described by her supporters, may have influenced the monarchy in unexpected ways. Don't miss a moment, subscribe, hit like, and comment below as we dive into this extraordinary chapter of royal speculation and analysis. The reaction swept through the world like a powerful wave. Across every social platform, searches and shares surged so rapidly that systems nearly struggled to keep up. Messages of encouragement and hashtags supporting her spread across continents within hours. News anchors grew visibly emotional as they read her words aloud during live broadcasts. Outside royal residences, candles were lit throughout the night, tiny points of light carrying quiet, heartfelt prayers. Messages poured in from students, everyday people, and even national leaders, all reaching out to her with support, solidarity, and admiration. Members of Camilla's inner circle, those long accustomed to working quietly behind the scenes, quickly sensed an emerging opportunity. They began quietly discussing the possibility of Camilla expanding her public influence once again. Not loudly, not overtly, but under the guise of maintaining stability. They talked about her taking on certain ceremonial responsibilities, overseeing symbolic engagements, and stepping in whenever circumstances required it, all while carefully shaping the narrative to appear seamless and reassuring. But amid that wave of emotion, the moment that left the entire nation silent was the image of Prince William, her husband. Reports later revealed that he had not been informed about the exact timing of her video release. Only a few hours afterward, while attending a school event, a child asked him the question the whole country had been quietly wondering. "How is she doing, sir?" Right there, in front of the entire classroom, William lowered his head. His expression fell. He turned away, but not quickly enough to hide his reddened eyes, revealing a rare glimpse of raw, unguarded emotion. It made the entire institution feel more human. Her vulnerability wasn't a weakness, it became a form of strength the monarchy had long tried to project but had never fully achieved. The aura of mystery, built up over centuries, was shattered in just over a minute. Yet this fracture caused no harm. Instead, it brought a sense of release, a royal family unafraid to acknowledge pain, unafraid to face the truth with courage. Not through titles or crowns, but through clarity, honesty, and quiet, unwavering bravery. Yet, while the world turned toward her with love and trust, inside those ancient walls, a new struggle was quietly taking shape. A silent but powerful battle. Who would step in to fill the void if she couldn't return to her former role? While ordinary people lit candles and sent prayers for her recovery, others within the palace were quietly calculating their next moves. The royal residence was no longer just a place of concern or mourning, it was slowly transforming into an arena of power, strategy, and careful maneuvering. Whenever conversations veered toward preparing a replacement, they were shut down immediately. In one private meeting, Anne reportedly confronted a senior aide directly, warning that even suggesting the idea of finding someone to take Eleanor's place could be enough to destroy what little public trust remained. Sophie also stepped in, stressing that Eleanor's absence was not an empty space for someone to claim it was a moment of hardship that demanded understanding, compassion, and respect. There were no ceremonial songs, no royal emblems accompanying the video. It was just her, sitting alone in a quiet garden. Her voice was calm and steady, yet the weight behind every word made it impossible for viewers to look away. She confirmed what the palace had avoided addressing for weeks. She had undergone major surgery, and the results revealed a serious health condition requiring long-term treatment. She didn't rely on complicated medical terms. Instead, she spoke simply and plainly, like someone sharing the story of her own journey, with honesty and heartfelt clarity. No one dared speak the word replacement. Within the royal family, that word was strictly forbidden, yet hints began to appear in meetings quietly postponed, in roles subtly reassigned, in long-standing positions shifting in ways once thought impossible. A difficult truth started to emerge in every private conversation. What would happen if she could not return? And it was within that uncertain void that power began to move. Not loudly, not publicly, but unmistakably. Everyone could sense the shift seeping through the palace corridors, quiet yet impossible to ignore. For the first time in his public life, the strong, composed prince broke down in tears, showing them openly without trying to hide anything. The press witnessed it all, yet this time, they chose not to broadcast it. Even the media seemed to recognize that this was no longer a royal spectacle. It was the raw pain of a family. She had done something unprecedented. She removed the polished armor the monarchy had always worn and replaced it with the unfiltered honesty of a human being facing the greatest challenge of her life. And that honesty didn't weaken the royal image. If anything, it made it more real, more relatable, and profoundly human. And then, just when that fragile hope seemed ready to fade, Eleanor spoke again. The world had braced itself for the worst, but in a moment both unexpected and profoundly moving, she returned not as a royal symbol, but as a resilient woman. Her health had shown meaningful improvement. It wasn't a complete victory, but it was the glimmer of hope everyone had been waiting for, a sign that strength, courage, and perseverance could still prevail. The language they used was always measured and strategic, but their motivations were never truly hidden. Everything was presented as a necessary duty rather than personal ambition. Those closest to Eleanor, the princess undergoing treatment, noticed this immediately. Princess Anne, in this story, was not fooled. Sophie wasn't either. They were women who had lived through the burdens and complexities of royal duty themselves, and their loyalty lay with the truth, not with political maneuvering or self-interest. The royal family could endure a period of silence, but they could not endure betrayal disguised as protocol. Even so, the behind-the-scenes maneuvering continued. Schedules were quietly reviewed. Certain patronage duties were reassigned. Public appearances were adjusted under the justification of maintaining continuity. All of it was carried out discreetly, without informing Prince William until he discovered it. And when he did, the anger surged within him like a rising flame, impossible to contain. William made his stance absolutely clear during a tense strategy meeting. There would be no replacement, no temporary stand-in, no carefully staged appearances to fill Eleanor's role. She is not gone, he said, his voice sharp and unwavering as steel, and she will not be erased from the narrative. It was more than an objection, it was a barrier he built with his own hands, a shield to protect the woman he loved and the woman who had reshaped the monarchy's image for an entire generation. In the midst of the chaos, trust became the first casualty. Advisors began watching one another with suspicion. Hints and half-truths, probing questions, and subtle acts of sabotage crept into every meeting. Even those with the best intentions found themselves unsettled, unsure whom to believe, unsure which side to support. Meanwhile, the public continued lighting candles, sending prayers, and sharing messages of support, completely unaware that behind the palace's ancient walls, a silent struggle for power had already begun. Another video was released. Like the first, it was short, without ceremony, without embellishment. But this time, even though her face appeared thinner, it radiated a quiet, powerful calm. She thanked the public with a voice that was sincere and unadorned, saying she could feel every wish, every prayer sent her way. And then she shared news no one had dared to hope for. Her health had entered a period of improvement. Her condition was more stable than before, though she didn't call it a victory, only a moment of survival, a sign of resilience that offered hope to everyone watching. During her most uncertain days, Eleanor was said to have written private letters to her 3 children, words she never intended the world to see. The letters were carefully sealed, meant to be opened only if she could not return. It was a mother's final act of protection. Although this has never been officially confirmed, the very idea of such stories was enough to move the nation. What she faced was not some vague challenge. It was a journey filled with fear, perseverance, and relentless effort. In that very authenticity, Eleanor became greater than any ceremonial role could ever define. She became a symbol for anyone who has ever carried fear in their heart, for families who stayed awake through endless nights beside a hospital bed, for parents who faced the impossible yet still planted seeds of hope day after day. Her charitable work, once focused on child welfare and mental health, now carried a new depth and weight, not because of a title, but because of lived experience, courage, and the resilience she had shown through her own journey. But William's words could not stop the wave of suspicion spreading through the palace. An institution once seen as a unified whole was beginning to fracture. Small factions emerged, one clinging desperately to tradition, another focused on maintaining the appearance of stability, and a small few choosing to stand with Eleanor's humanity. The balance of power, once carefully calibrated, now trembled, shifting with every closed-door meeting, every whispered conversation, and every subtle maneuver behind the palace walls. Her smile was warm, yet it carried a deep understanding of how fragile the road ahead still was. Experts confirmed that her improvement was a hopeful sign, but not a guarantee. It was the first light after a storm, yet not proof that the sky had truly cleared. That caution immediately influenced every decision within the palace. Alistair, relieved but steadfast, continued to protect her. He made it clear that Eleanor would not be returning to public duties right away, not for now, and possibly not for a very long time, allowing her the space and care she truly needed. The moment that truly broke the silence came when she was seen gently holding her children's hands as they walked across the school courtyard. There was no official engagement, no press entourage, but a parent captured the moment and shared it respectfully. The photo spread like wildfire, not because of how it looked, but because of what it represented. Eleanor had returned, not flawless, not radiant in royal splendor, but genuinely, unmistakably present. A mother who had weathered a storm, still strong enough to walk forward beside her children, showing quiet courage and resilience that spoke louder than any ceremony ever could. What began as a crisis had now become a catalyst for change. People no longer saw the royal family as distant, untouchable symbols, but as real, relatable human beings. Her fragility became her strength, and her story, now shared, carried, and continued by an entire nation, is far from over. The support for Eleanor came from every corner of the world, but it wasn't born of pity. It came from deep, genuine empathy, respect, and admiration for the courage she had shown in facing the impossible. Her appearances would be limited, entirely guided by her own wishes and her health. He refused to let the royal machinery pull her back into the ceremonial whirlwind ever again. She had given too much already, and now she needed the space to heal in her own way. Eleanor returned to public life through small, gentle steps. A quiet visit to a hospital ward, a private meeting with a children's care team. No photographers, no speeches, just her soft, genuine presence, quietly making a difference while staying true to herself. She revealed something no royal member had ever dared to show before: real pain, real uncertainty, and the courage to stand upright amid it all. It was that raw authenticity that made the public see her in an entirely new light. She was no longer just a face in carefully crafted portraits. She was a real human being, carrying the same fragility, the same strength, and the same resilience as anyone else. That image moved people deeply because they didn't see a princess, they saw a human being, strong even in her fragility. But whispers never disappear entirely. Behind closed-door meetings, a quiet question lingered, unspoken yet ever-present. What if the worst returns? How would the monarchy prepare for a future that could change in a single moment? The palace understood that this journey had transformed everything. Eleanor didn't just survive. She reshaped the very heart of the royal family. leaving an imprint of courage, honesty, and humanity that would endure for generations. The handwritten notes she sent to families facing the same struggles, the unannounced hospital visits, the quiet words of encouragement that were never publicized, all of it came together to tell a new kind of story. No longer the image of a princess following protocol, but of a woman using her own pain to create a path toward compassion, not for performance, but for purpose. Yet behind that strength were private moments filled with hurt moments the world would never see, moments where vulnerability quietly lived beneath her courage. She faced it with quiet steadiness, but never without a cost. And now, Eleanor was no longer seen merely as a future queen consort. She had become the emotional center of the entire royal family, not through power or protocol, but through authenticity. A monarchy that once hid its emotions was now being reshaped by her. Her voice, once expected to echo tradition, now carried something entirely new, the quiet, undeniable power of truth. A reminder that silence can protect, but sometimes truth is the only thing that can truly heal. The monarchy began to change from within. Its structure remained, but its spirit shifted. A woman who once stood close to despair had returned not only with her life, but with a renewed sense of purpose. The royal family was now forced to look back, not to defend itself, but to move forward with a more open, compassionate heart. Her journey is far from over, and her story continues to inspire hope, courage, and authenticity. But one thing the entire nation has come to understand: Eleanor didn't just return. She redefined the royal family through her courage, and in doing so, she saved the very soul of an institution once thought unshakable. Eleanor did not simply survive, she rebuilt the spirit of the monarchy. Through her vulnerability, she found strength, and she forced the palace to confront its deepest fear, the fear of its own fragility. Her return wasn't just good news, it was a turning point that reshaped the way the royal family connects with the public. For the first time, people saw a member of the monarchy not as a distant symbol, but as someone real, relatable, and human. How do you think Princess Eleanor's authenticity will transform the British monarchy in the years to come? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe so you won't miss our upcoming in-depth analyses and behind-the-scenes stories. Thank you for watching and being part of this journey with us. Here's a slightly shorter, still smooth and continuous version. 3 weeks. Just 3 weeks, yet that brief moment was enough to pull back the velvet curtain, hiding a truth no one expected. It makes you wonder, do you believe in destiny quietly guiding people together, or in carefully crafted plans shaping everything behind the scenes? Today, we're stepping into the pages of one man's private diary, a prince who truly believed he had walked into a real-life fairy tale. But as we follow his words, it becomes clear that behind the magic he felt, something far more complicated was starting to unfold. But then, because of one small, ordinary detail that everyone else overlooked, he realized he wasn't chosen at all, he had been targeted. In that moment, his whole world fell apart. Could the love he believed in actually be nothing more than a perfectly staged performance? Let's explore this story together. And remember to subscribe to the channel, hit that like button, and drop a comment to share what you think. What if Marcus was her project manager? And if that were true, then Harry hadn't been chosen as a husband out of love at all. He had been the target of an elaborate plan. The thought cut through Harry's pride, tearing at the self-worth of a man, a prince. He clicked frantically, unable to stop, trapped in a spiral of panic. 6 hours passed in silence, broken only by the hum of his computer. Outside, the sky shifted into the dull gray of dawn, but inside Harry, there was nothing, only complete, suffocating darkness. In Harry's mind, Marcus Anderson had always been cast in a very likable light. A quirky guy from Toronto with a sharp sense of style, a constant smile, and the knack for bringing energy to any room. Harry had once considered Marcus a close friend, even an ally, a brother of sorts, someone who always knew exactly when to step in, whether it was rescuing Meghan from a crowd or arranging the most private, intimate dinner tables just for them. He uncovered old interviews in local magazines, pieces Marcus had clearly tried to scrub from the internet. He followed broken links like a detective chasing down a missing alibi, desperate to make sense of everything. And the deeper he dug, the more the truth began to reveal itself. Independent sources from Toronto to London all pointed in the same direction. Marcus Anderson wasn't just a global consultant for Soho House. He was an access broker, someone who opened doors, managed connections, and curated the people allowed into certain circles. Old articles, ones written long before she became widely known, described this man in careful, almost coded language. They called him the gatekeeper. His real work wasn't managing properties or running hospitality groups. His currency was relationships. He specialized in finding and connecting striking, highly ambitious women, those without established social footing, with powerful, wealthy men who were often lonely, bored, or simply searching for something new. A navy blue canvas bag. It wasn't Hermes, and it wasn't Chanel. Nothing designer, nothing extravagant. But the golden embroidered letters on the front stopped Harry cold, hitting him like an iceberg. Soho House. His stomach tightened. Why Soho House? He knew that name everyone in high society did. This wasn't just some casual tote for personal belongings. It meant something specific, something he couldn't ignore. Innocence began to crack. He already knew he wouldn't be sleeping that night. Opening a new incognito tab, he felt his finger tremble as he typed 3 words he had never dared to place side by side before. Soho House, Marcus Anderson, Meghan Markle. He hit enter, and the moment the results appeared, a cold shiver ran down his spine. Link after link, image after image, article after article, an endless stream of information filled the screen, and none of it felt accidental. Zoom in, zoom out, stare, step away for a sip of water, then return, hoping the screen would finally reveal its secret. It felt as if the pixels themselves were hiding something, daring him to uncover it. Late one night, when fatigue dulled his reason but sharpened his senses, his eyes landed on a small, easily overlooked detail in the corner of the photo. On the glossy deck of the yacht, carelessly pushed aside, lay a tiny, unassuming object so ordinary that anyone else would have missed it. Yet to Harry, it held an undeniable significance. It all began with a single photograph, a picture taken in Croatia. Harry couldn't explain why it consumed his thoughts the way it did. 3 weeks had already passed since the images from that luxurious yacht trip blew up across social media. By now, he should have been used to his wife being the center of attention. But something inside him pushed back a quiet instinct, a whisper buried deep in his subconscious that just wouldn't let go. And so he sat there, staring at the pale blue glow of his computer screen, unable to shake the feeling that something about that photo wasn't as simple as it seemed. He cross-checked the timelines, digging through old photos from Toronto's high society events. In one shot, Meghan was at event A, and Marcus was there too. A week later, she met VIP B, and Marcus appeared in the background of that photo as well. The coincidences were so unreal that once or twice could have been random, but seeing it happen dozens of times over 5 years looked more like a pattern. Harry didn't want to accept it, and every part of him pushed back against the thought. Harry had trusted this man. He had welcomed Marcus into his inner circle without a second thought. But the screen before him tonight was telling a very different story, a far darker one. What he uncovered wasn't the profile of a harmless, enthusiastic social acquaintance. It was the profile of a powerful ghost. Determined to dig deeper, Harry began his digital excavation, scouring long-forgotten social blogs from as far back as 2010, and using data recovery tools to pull up cached versions of pages that should have been lost to time. Harry felt the blood in his veins turn to ice. He felt utterly foolish, a complete fool. Memories began to replay in his mind like a horror film on loop. He remembered the wedding of the century. Where had Marcus been seated? The front row, in the honorary spot reserved for the closest family. He remembered those secret dates in London, when he thought he had escaped the world. Marcus was always there, lurking in some corner, smiling and nodding. He remembered the trips to Toronto, too, each one now tinged with a sense of betrayal he hadn't been able to see at the time. He wanted to shut the computer, run upstairs, wake Megan, and beg her to tell him it was all a misunderstanding, that he was simply overwhelmed by the media pressure and imagining things. He wanted to hold on to that last fragile bit of hope, but it shattered the moment his eyes fell on the phone lying on the table. He needed confirmation from someone on the outside, someone who understood Marcus's game better than anyone else. With trembling hands, Harry reached for the phone. When the other end of the line finally picked up, his voice came out soft and hoarse, barely more than a desperate whisper. "I need to ask you about him, about the gatekeeper." A long silence followed, so long he thought the call had dropped. Then a heavy sigh drifted through the speaker, thick with hesitation. For the next 40 minutes, he sat completely still, like a statue, listening to a truth he was never supposed to hear. His friend spoke quietly, choosing each word with care. "Listen, the gatekeeper doesn't just have a social circle. This wasn't just a simple accessory, it was a quiet power emblem. That yacht wasn't owned by some random wealthy stranger. It belonged to someone tied to an exclusive, invitation-only circle." Suddenly, memories came rushing back. She had been moving in that world long before he ever met her. It was where she felt at home, where every room, every private dinner, every whispered conversation over a cocktail carried the weight of influence and connection. What he had once believed was a fateful coincidence the night they crossed paths now, under the revealing light of that small bag, felt unsettlingly intentional. He runs something we insiders call the training school. "Training school?" Harry repeated, his voice unsteady. "Yes, not a place with blackboards and chalk. It's training and access. Marcus looks for ambitious women, those who want to move up in the social world but don't know how, and he trains them." His friend went on, each word landing in Harry's mind like a nail. "He teaches them how to dress in quiet luxury, how to speak in a way that draws the attention of powerful men." How could she afford that lifestyle? Business class flights across Europe, the priciest designer outfits, Soho House memberships in multiple cities, London, Toronto, Los Angeles, Istanbul, and long stretches spent in 5-star hotels. Harry reached out to another source, someone still working in the accounting side of the Soho House Toronto system. After a few quiet, carefully worded exchanges, the answer he received hit him like a bucket of cold water thrown straight in his face. A line from an old lifestyle magazine stopped him cold, making him lean back in his chair as his heart slammed against his ribs. He doesn't attend the parties, he designs them. He's never drunk, he's always watching. His job is to make sure the right people just happen to cross paths at the perfect moment, in the exact place he's already mapped out. The words felt like a punch, each sentence peeling back another layer of a world he had never truly understood. He teaches them how to speak in a way that draws attention from influential men, how to walk into a room full of billionaires without feeling out of place. He brings them to exclusive spots like Soho House, hands them access, and introduces them to people who can open major doors. Harry listened, his hand tightening around the phone until his knuckles turned white. And Harry, his friend's voice dropped even lower. Marcus even knows their personal schedules. Marcus's entire way of operating suddenly became clear. He was the one who connected struggling B-list actresses with influential Hollywood producers, matched unknown models with Silicon Valley tech billionaires, and, most importantly, acted as the bridge that helped ambitious newcomers slip into long-established elite circles, places where money alone couldn't buy a way in. He knew this call would shatter whatever fragile peace he'd been trying to hold on to. It was very late, the house completely silent, with Meghan and the kids fast asleep. In the dim darkness of his study, Harry dialed the number of someone he hadn't reached out to in years, a former senior member of Soho House London, a seasoned figure who understood the shadowy corners of high society and had a reputation for never speaking anything but the truth. And the final words from his old friend made Harry feel queasy. Marcus doesn't just introduce people to you, Harry. He positions them on your path. When romance fades, financial doubts have a way of creeping in and growing louder. Harry was a practical man. He knew exactly what a mid-tier cable TV actor earned, and he had a clear picture of Meghan's financial situation before they got married. As he weighed it all carefully in his mind, considering every detail and every pattern he had noticed over the years, the scale tipped sharply, almost impossibly, to one side. He knows where the prince will be, where the film producers are dining, and he uses that information to create so-called chance encounters. That's the strategy, and it's almost flawless. Harry stared at the blank wall as the scattered pieces in his mind began snapping into place, forming a disturbing picture. In 2013, Marcus showed up at the polo matches Harry attended. In 2014, Marcus appeared at charity events in London. Always there, always watching, always waiting for the perfect moment. Marcus was always the driver, the one making reservations, pouring the wine, always there, always nearby. The whispered conversations with Meghan, which Harry had once dismissed as casual chatter, now felt heavier, charged with a hidden meaning he could no longer ignore. He finally acknowledged the uneasy sense he had long tried to push aside, that Marcus was constantly monitoring everything, not to protect them, but to keep the script on track. Then a brutal thought cut through his mind, sharp as a scalpel. What if Marcus wasn't just a friend of Meghan's, but something far more deliberate and controlling than he had ever imagined? If you think there are still hidden secrets behind this story, go ahead and comment one below. If you're not quite convinced yet, comment 0 instead. We'd love to hear what you think. Enjoy the video, and don't forget to like, share, and hit that subscribe button so you never miss our latest uploads. Every single subscription and like you give is the motivation we need to keep bringing you even more incredible and fascinating stories. Meghan's membership for 5 years wasn't discounted, wasn't some special artist rate. It was fully covered by a third party. When Harry pressed for the name of the sponsor, the source hesitated before speaking. Marcus. Marcus Anderson has business accounts set up to sponsor certain women. It's an investment, Harry. Someone invested in Meghan. Someone paid for her to go from an ordinary Hollywood girl to a global high society lady, ready